Guys, welcome back to the Jays Put Down podcast. I'm your host, Jaden, and today we're going to be talking about the New York Giants. News coming out today that they are now starting Jackson Dart, their rookie quarterback. He is going to be the starter from now until foreseeable future as they move Russell Wilson to the bench after their 22-9 loss to the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And we'll also be discussing the Ravens and Lions matchup on Monday Night Football last night, why the Baltimore Ravens should be concerned moving forward. Get into all of that here on the podcast, but make sure you guys check us out here on YouTube, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, follow us on Instagram, and we're on TikTok as well, Jay's Put Down Pod, so you can find content, reels, just everything you need to know as far as news, updates, everything like that in the NFL, college football, all that good stuff. So make sure you do that right now. But like I said, first off, we'll talk about the New York Giants benching Russell Wilson in favor of Jackson Dart. Now, this has been something that a lot of fans of the Giants have been wanting for since Jackson Dart got drafted, and it was kind of a weird thing when they drafted him back in April. Like, I was one of those people who was like, you sign Russell Wilson, you sign Jameis Winston, and you go and draft a quarterback. Why? So that's like that. I was confused at that. But clearly the Giants were banking on some type of fact that Russell Wilson may not have been what they hoped for him to come in and be for them, being that starter, being that veteran, being consistent enough. And that's why they took Jackson Dart, looking ahead toward their future, obviously, and through the first couple weeks of the season, the Giants offense has struggled outside the game against Dallas, but Dallas's defense just isn't that good, which is something we all know. And they lost to the Commanders, didn't go too well offensively for them. The offensive line still with their struggles. They struggled in week 2 against Dallas also. I mean, you had one offensive lineman had like 4 penalties and things like that. But you get to the Chiefs game on Sunday Night Football, and they only scored 9 points. And Kansas City's defense is good. We all know this. They have a good defense. But they you can move the ball against them, and the Giants were not able to do that. They're now 0-3. And usually teams that start the year off 0-3 have less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. So that's like an actual stat, by the way. Like that's real. I saw a graphic on the Fox broadcast, and I was watching the Falcons-Panthers game, and they were saying, like, yeah, teams who start off the year 0-3 have a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. So not looking good for the Giants, which is why they made the quarterback change today. And you go in favor of Jackson Dart, the rookie from Ole Miss. And I think this was something I talked about in the offseason. If you guys remember on this podcast, I said that Jackson Dart should be the starter for the Giants. He should have been the starter, I feel like. And I get why, right? He's a rookie quarterback. You don't want to throw him in there in the fire too early, especially with how the Giants' offensive line tends to struggle, which has been a problem for them for years now. And people's concerned with that, which is why they feel like Jackson Dart shouldn't have been the starter out the gate. You can make that conversation or that argument rather for any rookie quarterback, but I feel like now the way the game is, see, it's like a double-edged sword type of situation, right? Because on one hand, you start your rookie quarterback, you get them into the flow of the game, you get them that experience early, and if they don't work, it's like, okay, you can pull the plug, right? But then if you don't start them, especially if they were a high draft pick. Now, Jackson Dart wasn't a super high draft pick by the Giants, but if they are a high draft pick, then it's also the conversation where it's like, okay, you draft this guy super high, for a reason. You got your veteran quarterback here that he's the starter. Usually unless that quarterback is Joe Burrow or if it's Jayden Daniels or if it's, Justin Herbert, like these generational talents that we have seen come through the draft the past couple of years. Heck, even Trevor Lawrence, even though he's not really, as I talked about before, he's not really a generational QB to me. But that's a different conversation. So otherwise, it's like you don't put that guy out there right away, right? And in danger of him getting injured or just by the fact that he has never played a snap of NFL football before, especially if you're a competing team if you're a competing team, you probably wouldn't have a high draft pick like that. But if you're a team that's like, okay, we feel like this is our year to turn it around, but you don't want to put your rookie quarterback there. It's a hard situation that NFL teams and front offices and their coaching staffs that they have to go through this. But for the Giants' particular scenario, for their particular situation, Jackson Dart is their best option at quarterback to me. Russell Wilson, I'm not hating on Russell Wilson. I love what Russ has done in his career. He's a fantastic quarterback. This is a guy who's won a Super Bowl. He has played phenomenal football throughout his career. But he's at the point now where it's just, you're not going to win with him at quarterback. You're not going to. So you have to go to your contingency plan. You have to go to your other option, and that is Jackson Dart, who's your rookie quarterback. And I think that you know the Giants are going to have to work to scheme him, to be able to survive in this situation. They're going to have to work some things around, maybe some quick slants, some quick outs. Just involving those type of things in the passing game to get him comfortable, when he starts his first game uh, next week. So I think that's what they need to do as far as Jackson Dart is concerned. But interesting move. Giants also signed kicker Younghoe Koo out of free agency to the practice squad, by the way. So you know, have with that what you will, Giants fans. But let me know what you guys think, though. Do you guys think the Giants made the right move starting Jackson Dart right now? I mean, with their season, now at 0-3 and I mean, not looking good so far, or do you think they should have kept Russell Wilson in just to see if he could, if they could figure it out and get it going? So let me know what you think in the comments about that. Now moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. Played the Detroit Lions last night on Monday Night Football at M&T Bank Stadium. It was a good game. Both teams played really well. Offensively, both teams played really well. The the Lions offense moved the football up and down the field very good, rushed the football very efficiently. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery had a great game. That 1-2 punch, Sonic and Knuckles, right, like they're called. So I was impressed by that and how the offensive line played, especially with the Detroit offensive line having new starters. Of course, Frank Ragnow, their center, retired, and they lost Austin Seibert in free agency to the Titans. So you're having to put in new offensive linemen there in that lineup. You got Tate Ratliff, the rookie from Georgia, who's starting at right guard, and Mahogany at left guard. So you got new starters in there for the Lions, and they were still able to move the football efficiently up and down the field, getting everybody involved. Jameson Williams, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, like all these guys these talented playmakers they have on the offensive side of the football. And the question was going into the season with Ben Johnson's departure to Chicago, would they be able to keep that sustained success on offense? And you can say the same thing about the defense side. We'll get to it in a second. But would they be able to keep that sustained success on offense? Would they be able to move the ball and, up and down the field and just have that potent attack offensively that Ben Johnson gave them when he was calling the plays? And I mean, outside of that one game against the Packers, they've been able to do that, in the first game of the year. So, I like what I saw of Detroit last night. Like what I saw of Jared Goff, and love how he took command of the offense. Playing in a tough environment, M&T Bank Stadium, and able to go in there and move the football keep the ball ahead of the chains, move the football down the field, punch it in the end zone. That's how it's done. And for Baltimore, I think Lamar Jackson played a great game. Derrick Henry didn't have too much of a great game. He fumbled the ball. Again, he leads NFL in fumbles with 3. So that's something they're going to work on with ball security. Big guy like him, it's kind of weird to think he's able to lose a football like that. Sitting there at 6'3", 250 pounds. I mean, coming down like a bowling ball. But at the same time, they're going to have to work on those turnover issues. Defensively, the Baltimore Ravens got gashed, and that's something that is issue. The Ravens defense has given up 96 points through 3 games so far this season. Only second to the Miami Dolphins, who have given up 97 points through 3 games so far this season. So clearly, there are some issues on the Ravens defensive side of football that need to be addressed. They're going to figure some things out in the secondary or whatnot. You just paid Kyle Hamilton, who's a great, fantastic safety for them. He got a big bag, but and you got Nate Wiggins out there, Marlon Humphrey, of course, a veteran out of Alabama. I think the Ravens have got to figure something out on defense. They're going to have to, and they were missing some guys some guys were injured, and I don't know how to say his name. And Damu Bouquet, the defensive lineman, he didn't play. They had some other guys that were out, but for the most part, they were pretty healthy, and they just couldn't stop the Lions. They just couldn't stop them. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the play action pass. So that was killing them, and Detroit spammed it all night long, and that's what caused them to get that 38-30 win. So I think for the Ravens moving forward, you got to figure it out, man. You know this, and it's like this team is so talented, man, year after year after year, and they just can't get it done, you know. And last year they lost against the Bills in the playoffs. You know, year before they lost against the Chiefs in the playoffs. So my thing with Baltimore is, and Lamar Jackson, man, like I want to see him win a Super Bowl. Like I really do, man. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You know, some argue he should have won the MVP last year over Josh Allen. You know, that's a debate that it's that's subjective opinion to everybody. I don't know which way you guys go with that, but that's he had the numbers, right? You know, and so far he's had a great season this year, but it's just his team around him isn't playing that well. So it's just one of those situations, man. Baltimore coaching staff and the front office, haven't done the best job over the past couple of years with maximizing the window that the Ravens have right now, and I do feel like that window is closing very soon. Like probably the next 1 to 3 years, like that window is going to be closed for the Baltimore Ravens. So they're going to have to figure out a way to win in the postseason, when it matters, right? Obviously we're in week 3. It's still early. Still got a whole lot of football left, but just something to keep an eye on as we move throughout the year. That's something that I'm thinking about if I'm, a Baltimore Ravens fan, or if I'm a player on the team, because you have to be upset, right? Like you guys have been there year after year after year, but you have not been able to get the job done. And at what point, you're in the AFC, you're playing against the Chiefs, the Bills, I'd say the Bengals, but not the past couple of years. They've struggled, but normally the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, these, and now you can add teams like the Chargers into the mix. This year they're playing pretty good. They could be down, they could be in that bucket when we get down to the postseason. They could be in that mix, right? It's just you're at that point now, man. Like, we can go toe to toe talent wise with these other teams in the AFC, with these other juggernauts in the AFC, but we can't beat them when we have to, and then like I said, you look at the NFC side of things, and you're not able to beat a Detroit Lions team that again is talented, but who lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators. And the Lions defense was still able to play decently enough to get the win. They gave up 30 points, but they were still able to play good enough football to get the win. So that's what matters ultimately in the NFL. I don't think people understand how hard it is to, like, week to week in the NFL is like so like up and down, like even killed. It's like you can't, like, you could be riding high one week, get a big win, 50-0, just exaggerating, 1 week, and then the next week you lose like 35 to 30. Right? It's week to week. That's professional football. That's how it works. It's one of those things where anything can happen, right? And you have to go out there and play your game the best you can, and execute and just be on top of your P's and Q's. Otherwise, those things can happen. You can get beat by teams that then you have no business losing to. So that's just how it goes in professional football. But I just want to come on the podcast, guys, and kind of talk about that. Like I said, the Giants starting Jackson Dart now, that's going to be interesting. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Do you agree with the move by New York again? And for the Lions and the Ravens, do you think the Ravens, what does Baltimore need to do, to moving forward, right now at this point in the season, sitting at 1-2. So let me know what you guys think about that. But thank you for watching today or listening, however you are checking out Jays With Down. Again, follow us on Instagram, Jays With Down Pod. Follow us on TikTok, Jays With Down Pod. And we'll see you next time on the show. Thank you.